Hey there, and welcome to the People Who Help People podcast. This is the spot for HR and people ops pros who are all about building better businesses by putting people first. We chat with founders and experts who've been there, done that, and are generous enough to share what actually works. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hello again. Today I'm happy to be speaking with Jonathan Wojtanowicz, president at Systematic Inquiry Group, about creating safe work environments by providing intelligent protection of people and profits. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan.
Thanks, Craig.
Glad to have you on. Jonathan, tell me about Systematic Inquiry Group. What are the services you provide, and how have they grown recently?
Sure. So we are a boutique security firm. We do physical security and private investigations. People think of a lot of things when you bring up private security. Generally, you think of Paul Blart walking around the mall. It's not exactly what we do, although we do have a uniformed element. I think of us more like a private secret service. So we would offer secure transportation and safety and security for high net worth, high profile individuals and their families and our businesses and homes. So kind of run the gamut. I ran as a freelance bodyguard for a while before I came back to the company. And on the investigation side, our specialty is really to detect and deter internal theft, which is kind of the number one cause of business failure generally, internal related. So internal theft just means either your employees are actively stealing from you or they're providing information to an outside person who's doing that.
Got it. And how long have you been involved with the business?
Oh man, well, my dad started it back in 1993. So I've been involved in some capacity my whole life. Officially, I came on in late 2013 when I got out of the Marine Corps and worked for about a year and a half, got my own private investigator's license. And then it was still a small business at that point, and I decided to kind of pursue a security career and left the company, worked as a freelance bodyguard for Hollywood and Rich and Famous up there for a little while, and then came back to the company in 2019 after kind of recognizing a lack of integrity and knowledge base in a lot of the company as I was working for. I figured we could do at least as good a job as those guys. And we expanded our offerings and grew to become a security company as well as investigations.
Got it. So your dad started the company and ran it for many years as primarily an investigations business, and then you added in the security element.
Yes.
Okay. I heard something that you just said. You noticed a lack of integrity with your former employer. Now that you're president of Systematic Inquiry Group, what are you doing to ensure integrity at your company?
That's a great question. Well, it's our leading value, actually. So we have a few values as a company. That's one of them, and that's the most important one. That's the bedrock of everything we do. So one of the ways that we make sure that is seen and used on a day-to-day basis, with our services, with our company, when you're interacting with us or any of our agents, is we hire for our values. So our actual system that I created, interview questions and processes that we do to vet potential candidates is focused on determining whether these candidates have the values that we have. Make sure we have value alignment, and that's the main focus of our vetting process. Skills can always be taught. I remember reading, I forget which book it was, but it's so simple. Yeah, when you think about it, it's absolutely true. It said every top expert in their field began knowing nothing about it. Right. So if you think about that, so Einstein wasn't born a fantastic mathematician, right? He learned that later on. And you can argue, specific talents that he may have had that he discovered or something like that. But the reality is the top brain surgeon right now never knew how to do brain surgery until he went to medical school and started doing that. And so I believe the same thing for individuals in the security industry. There's a big bias in the industry with most companies that hire people based on their backgrounds. specifically military law enforcement. Now, I will always say it's a positive to have that as a background because of all the money that the government has put into training that individual, myself included. I've benefited from that. However, that doesn't make you good at this specific job necessarily. And the reality is, you either can do the job or you can't. Your background doesn't say that necessarily, and it definitely doesn't tell me what your values are. So you could be the very best law enforcement officer, but have zero ability to tell the truth on things. And if you have no integrity, then it's not going to work. So
Sure. I hope it's not that clear cut, but I know what you're saying.
Usually
I hope that most members of our law enforcement community do have a high standard for integrity. But what I'm hearing is you've made it a non-negotiable. You've made it so that everybody who joins your firm or even is considered for joining your firm understands your values, and you're vetting against those values first and foremost.
That's right.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I usually do it without them knowing.
Yeah.
Is the focus, because I don't want them to be able to game the game too. That's all part of it. I'll ask questions that aren't obvious what I'm asking about, and then I'll ask it in a different way in another interview at another time and through another person. So we have reference material from different interviews, and we cross-reference your answers and look at how you responded to those things. Are you consistent? Similar to what psych tests do and things like that.
Sure. So I'm assuming that at some point you had to capture all these values and figure out which values are most important to us and what we're looking for. So how did you go about doing that? One, deciding we're going to be a values-based organization and we're going to hire for or ensure values alignment in the hiring process. But you had to start with, what are our values? So how many of those did you inherit from your father, the organization your father started, and how many did you enhance or amplify along the way?
That's a really good question. One of the ways I first kind of ran into it was at a security conference a few years ago. Guys were asking questions in a kind of open forum discussion with a panel interview about hiring. One of the panelists pointed out one of the guys in the crowd. He said, "You know what? You really answered this question a while ago much better, and I just want you to kind of reiterate that for everyone else to hear." And he said, instead of hiring people for their resume, we've decided to hire people for our values as a company. So we're looking to see if that individual aligns with the values that we hold dear and important. So that got me thinking about what our values are, and that we needed to create and memorialize those and have them on the website and be able to articulate that. And that went a step further. I listened to a Craig Gershell podcast, and he talked about creating values, and he said there's a couple ways to do that, and I used kind of his questions to help guide me. But what are the things that when they're not happening drive you crazy, kind of things? And integrity is definitely one of those, or the things that get you the most excited. And integrity has definitely always been something that my dad has held in high regard, and myself, and I've more or less been known for that in the industry. I've had people talk about that. I don't bend the rules for anybody on things. And so him and I kind of wrote down lists of stuff, and then we worked over the course of a few weeks to kind of shorten the list and get down to a few things, and then taking that list, and now you need to give that word life to you. So integrity is like, what does that even mean, right? And what does it mean to me and us as a company? And it needs to be memorable, and it needs to be portable, or two of the things that he talked about. And so that just means it has a stick in your head, and you need to be able to articulate it easily. So integrity to us was the statement, regardless of the cost, we will do what is right. And regardless of the cost to us, even. So, if I make a mistake on, on the bill or something like that, and I mischarge them and I end up having to pay hours to guys that I didn't bill for, I'm going to eat that because that was my fault. That was my mistake. Now I can, of course, appeal to the client and say, hey, I screwed up. Can I charge you for this? The guy stayed longer, and usually that's fine too. If it's legitimately my fault or my mistake, we have to own up to that, and we're gonna absorb the cost of doing what's right always. And I expect our people to do the same. And every time I bring somebody on, even if I don't, I would tell them, you're gonna make mistakes, right? And I make mistakes too. And so when you make a mistake, I just want you to tell me about it. Just own up to it. And the better and the faster you can do that, the more likely that I can handle it and we have a better outcome, and it doesn't cost you your job or other people their jobs. And bad news just gets worse with time. So you gotta get it out there.
So I like that. I like that. A, you and your dad developed this list together. B, you said it's got to be measurable and portable. And then last but not least, it sounds like you find ways to bring that into the conversation, both into the hiring process, but then also in the day to day, or I'll say onboarding, or as you're bringing in new folks. You mentioned previously that your company grew by acquisition, that you had acquired another firm. First of all, was that recent? And two, how did you ensure that the new company understood?
Yeah, so that was a few years ago that we made the acquisition.
Person.
It was a big growth for us as a company. We went from being a few $100,000 a year to I think 1.6 million. So it was kind of like a David and Goliath moment where David ate Goliath, which is kind of surprising, but that's how it happened. And it's been a roller coaster, kind of taking on a different culture and trying to bring ours in. It's almost been somewhat of a winnowing process, I guess, where people have been finding their way out, or when they're pressed with the way we do things, they find their way out, or we end up having to remove them because they're not performing to our standards, or they're not adhering to our values. One of the quickest ways to get rid of good people is to either A, not listen when they tell you things, or B, tolerate subpar performance by team members. And so this is one of the things I struggled with our vice president, who also came in through the acquisition. Was he had almost like a mother bear mentality for all the guys up there, which I actually liked. I enjoyed that. He took ownership of that. He defended the people on the team up there, because I'm the big bad guy trying to come down on the little guys up there, maybe from his point of view. But over time, he and I have gotten closer and gotten to know each other, and the values that I hold, and he holds many similar values as well. We've realized, some of these guys are not aligned with the way that we do things, and they're not a fit. And we need to, move forward from that. It's been a slow process. I think it's much harder when you're starting with people who've already been there versus starting with a brand new relationship. So it's like teaching an old dog new tricks. Not that it can't be done, but it's just longer, because you have to unlearn the bad habits and learn new habits versus just start fresh. So that's been a big challenge.
So two questions. One, it's clear you didn't compromise on your values, nor your expectations. But think of a scenario where one, gosh, I wish I had found a better fit for that person sooner, known as fire faster. Or two, where somebody did learn new tricks, where once they understood your values, you saw a different performance in them and arguably the team around them. Does either one of those examples, one of them come to
Definitely
mind?
the second one.
What would you learn from
Recently just happened within the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
Had a account manager who we were really frustrated with. He wasn't carrying his weight, essentially, and but come to find out, his boss was naturally upset. He had certain responsibilities that he wasn't fulfilling on a regular basis. But once I really dug into it, his manager was enabling that and had been doing so for a long time. So there was some natural animosity there. I kind of realized there was really unmet expectations on both sides of that. And part of that, I think, was because the job roles and responsibilities were not clearly defined to where we had an objective piece of criteria, basically, that anybody could refer to. And so the account manager was expecting his boss to do his job for him, as he had been doing. And his boss was expecting the account manager to do the job, but we hadn't really clearly defined what that was for him. And so I talked to his boss first before the account manager and kind of got the story. And we've had some issues with this account manager not being the most respectful of individuals. However, I was reading About Face by David Hackworth, and he was talking about I could tolerate. The quote was, "I could tolerate any amount of insubordination as long as they're doing the job." So it's like, are you doing your job? If you're doing your job, I can deal with you not talking to me the way you should, maybe. So, he was fulfilling the job duties, but come to find out he was missing a few of them. So I talked to his superior, and we decided, I think the way forward is really just to clearly define what the job is, and either he's going to rise to the occasion or he's not. And, once I clearly articulated what we expected him to do, he started doing it right away. and the problem was really solved. And, I think the issues is solved now. There's still some, emotions running around because there was a little bit of a run-in, but he's doing the job, and that's the important part. And now his boss doesn't have to carry his pack for him, as we would say in the military. So a win on that one.
Good. And what value in the organization does that reinforce?
It's really,
certainly integrity. Sounds like you treated this gentleman with integrity. You assumed good intent.
No. Integrity and then personal
don't
growth.
Don't let me put words in your mouth,
is
though.
One of ours
Go ahead.
as well. And so, I want anybody who works with us to walk away having and be able to look back and say, "Hey, I learned this. I learned something from being there." And obviously, selfishly, I don't want them to leave. But if they do, they'll look back fondly and remember the things that they learned from us, whether that's something about values, whether that's a skill. All those are helpful.
Got it. So was personal growth one of the values?
So integrity, competitive excellence, and personal growth are our three primary values. And, competitive excellence, I'll just read the last couple. Competitive excellence is we run every race to win, going the extra mile and thinking outside the box. Personal growth is we don't grow our business, we grow our people. So I'm a firm believer of troop welfare. My dad didn't like troop welfare as much, so we settled on personal growth. But it's really, when you take care of your troops, your Marines or soldiers or your people, your team, they take care of you. It's really that simple. People without integrity will take advantage of that. But we're looking to work with people that have integrity. So I experienced that, as a young Marine, with leaders taking care of me. and being taught to put your Marines before yourself. And so you would always take care of them before you take care of yourself. And my my dad has always done that. We eat last is a good a way of thinking about that. And so if there's not enough food on the table, who doesn't eat? It's like the leader. If they're a good leader, they would be the one who doesn't eat. And that goes down to when payroll comes along and all those things in the small business. That's always a question sometimes. So, we take the hits, and we take them for the better of the team.
Sounds like you've learned something from your dad. Got it. Okay. I too served like you in the Army, not the Marines, but mutual respect there. But we eat last was an important one that I learned as well, and that I always follow through on. I'm always the last one in the buffet line, even though when it's filled with a bunch of people that don't know why I'm standing way back there, it's a hard habit to get away from. So I like that. So you've got, it sounds like, 3 primary values, and those are integrity, competitive excellence, and growing personal growth. Now, anybody who's interviewing for Systematic Inquiry Group can game their interview now, because they can watch this podcast. They can know that those are your big 3.
They can,
and also
they
know
can.
that you're going to ask them different questions to find out. But in reality, yes, they can. Anybody can. They can look at your website and see those things. But in reality, I like the way that you reinforce those that you captured those values, and they're a nice combination of things that your dad has known has made the business successful since he started it, to things that you added from your time in the Marines, your time in a leadership crucible, and were important to you. And you've blended those together nicely, and you're carrying them forward as you've assumed the helm at Systematic Inquiry Group that you're currently holding.
It's been a lot of fun.
I think it's a great story. So just a comment there. So Jonathan, I've enjoyed this conversation today. If others have heard something that they that resonated with them, or they'd like to follow up and speak with you some more,
sure. You can reach out to me via email or my LinkedIn. Pretty active on either of those, or you could call me directly on my company cell 714-367-4261.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today, hearing about not just how you have joined the firm that your dad started, but that together you formed a strong values statement and proposition that you live by, and that you reinforce with every hire.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and Jonathan, I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Take care.